Hello, everyone. Thank you for those in the audience tonight joining us. My name is Joy. I'm coming to you from C Magazine, where I'm currently editor. I'm really happy to introduce this conversation tonight between Brody Weaver, Elliot Ciz, and Excel Garay. So Brody and Elliot's artist project, Born in a Body, opens C's autumn issue on codes, alongside a curatorial text by Excel that's beautifully woven in. And if you have the print issue, you can see how it begins with this really impactful title page. And we're also joined here tonight by the amazing Daisy Duncan, who's publishing intern and running tech behind the scenes. And please note we're going to record this session, and we are recording right now, and the video will be available online. And also, in case you know interested people who couldn't make it, we'll be sharing the link through C Magazine. So I'm currently in CMAG's offices based in Toronto or Takaranto or Gichikawenjing, the traditional territory of peoples including the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Huron-Wendat, and Mississaugas of the Credit. And this continues to be home to Indigenous peoples from Turtle Island and beyond. We continue to say this at the magazine to, at the very least, ground in the realities of the ongoing colonial project of Canada, and defer to the land histories and presence of Indigenous peoples here and globally toward knowledge and actions against continued settler colonialism. So to begin, I'll give a short intro and then hand it off to our artist and curator. So to begin, CMAG's artist projects provide an opportunity for artists to experiment within the pages of the magazine form, kind of the public-private nature of print. This usually spans the first 6 and last 2 pages of the magazine, effectively bookending each issue. The projects engage with the issue's themes, harness their tensions, riff off of them. Each for the past few years has been curated by a guest curator who chooses artists to collaborate with. And today's conversation runs for about an hour, including a 10-minute Q&A at the end. So if you look to the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see the Q&A function where you can input questions throughout as Brody, Elliot, and Excel are talking, and then we'll get back to them at the end. So Born in a Body in the Codes issue is based on Brody and Elliot's experimental animated documentary, which positions trans people as experts of their own lives, bodies, and medical needs. If you registered for this Zoom meeting, a screening link will have been mailed to you. But this link is also to watch the complete film will also be available until December 10th. And I will repost the link and access in the chat if people want to re-access or share with those who would be interested. And this conversation tonight asks, how have trans people acted not as passive receivers of discourse from medicine, law, and media, but as agents in the construction of knowledge about their own lives? As Excel writes about Born in the Body, it offers an alternative form of representation, one that oscillates between visibility and invisibility in a place void of time. This denies viewers direct access to the bodies of participants. It instead presents an intentional angle that heightens the viewer's intrigue and privileges the observations of the participants. It encourages viewers to be more aware of their own subjective perceptions. And without delay, I'll hand this conversation over to the speakers.
Thank you so much for the generous introduction, Joy. Before we begin, I would like to also do a land acknowledgement. Hello, everyone. I see some familiar, cute names in the audience. Brody Weaver, Elliot Ciz, and I are based in Jipuktuk Mi'kma'ki. This territory is the home of the Mi'kmaq and the Wolastoqiyik peoples. Settlers are bound to the peace and friendship treaties. We wish to acknowledge that it's important to recognize our privileges as settlers in this context and consistently continue to find creative ways to arrive or literally give land back. Land is everything. This is increasingly more important for all of us to not only realize or acknowledge, but also to put in effort, especially in the context of the multiple genocides happening right now in Palestine, Congo, Sudan, and Tigray. All settler logics, philosophies, feelings, and spiritualities are dangerous because they are committed to epistemic violence, emboldened as well as reinforced and supported through the settler nation state. It becomes increasingly important to not only be aware of the space we all take in the lands we occupy, but also the invisible debt relations we knowingly or unknowingly impose the peoples who are protectors of this land. I wish to remind all of us that trust is built through ongoing learning and continued co-conspirations with Indigenous people in the name of land back. I would like to begin by introducing the artist and me. Uh, Brody Weaver is a white settler educator, media artist, and writer living and learning in Jipuktuk. She has a BA in art history and contemporary culture from NASCAD University and was a media arts scholar at the Center for Arts Tapes in 2022 to 2023. As a genderqueer woman, she is entranced by the constructions of historical and contemporary knowledge about gender, sexuality, medicine, and trauma. Her partner, Elliot Ciz, is a white settler trans man born and raised in Bedford, Nova Scotia. He is a self-taught animator, a DIY filmmaker. He is drawn to intuitive processes and sees media as an emotional medium and has taken classes on film production, film history, and cultural studies at University of King's College and Toronto Metropolitan University. Hi, everyone. My name is Excel. I am an artist curator operating on Mi'kma'ki in Jipuktuk. My work in these intersecting roles is informed by mutual desires, discovered through acts of collaboration. I am currently the co-director of the Khyber Center for the Arts. My artistic and academic lenses are informed by hauntology, which is a portmanteau term that combines ontology and hauntings by Jacques Derrida from The Spectres of Marx. It allows me to better commune with post-colonial cultural production, trans aesthetics, apparitional aesthetics, and anti-colonial works. And I would like to say a bit about, introduce this film by Brody Weaver and Elliot Ciz. Born in the Body is an interview-based film with this amazing looping ghostly animation by Ciz that disrupts the medicalization of the trans community. The film positions lived experiences and knowledge of trans people by trans people as experts of their own lives, bodies, and needs. This film challenges viewers to reconsider pathologization, histories, and realities of healthcare access and inaccess, generational differences between in the trans community, system change, and what might be possible when we see trans healthcare as one component of a larger project of liberation and well-being. This beautiful collaborative film was also made in Jipuktuk, together with Marley O'Brien, Rentian Morris, Chris Cochran, Mabel Monroe, Aaron Shaw, Gray Pitapan Muldoon, and Carmel Farabash. Yeah, and we're going to be doing a sneak peek screening of this film, a part of it. I like to call it the juicy part of the film in this artist talk before we proceed to the question portion. It's an incredible film, and Weaver and Ciz are aware of the dynamics of the transgender gaze, and I think that's a very important main component in the film. And they both manifested that apparitional aesthetics as trans aesthetics. And I want to include a quote by academic and writer Jack Alberstam from the article that this gaze, the transgender gaze, is dependent on complex relations in time and space between seeing and not seeing, appearing and disappearing, knowing and not knowing. It becomes increasingly important, in my opinion, to take the positions of the unseen or the unknown or specters to understand different vantage points, labor perspectives, and phenomenological findings. And I'm going to hand it to Brody to talk more before the screening.
Hi, everyone, and thanks, Joy and Excel, for the introductions. I'm Brody.
I'm Elliot.
Thanks, everyone, for joining. It's nice to see some familiar names in the attendees list there. So we're just going to start with a little screening of the last portion of the film. So as we're going to talk about, it's structured in 3 parts. So the first part is an introduction of the 9 participants, including ourselves. And then the second part is folks talking about their specific experiences accessing care. And then the last part is reflections and critiques from their experiences. So I'm gonna share my screen now to share the last part there, and then we'll come back for some questions and discussion. Just give me one moment. All right.
Friends healthcare was originally like a form of like community-based knowledge rather than medical knowledge. I feel like the institutionalization of that knowledge does the job of making it seem like medicine owns it, right? This thing we call trans healthcare originated as practices which gender variant people had developed to like do gender in the ways that they wanted. It wasn't when the when the identification of sex hormones and their synthetic reproduction began. For cis people, mind you, like this is the age of synthetic estrogens for birth controls. This is the age of synthetic testosterone for cis men became available to like fix impotency issues and like being used sometimes in context of like conversion therapy. That's when gender variant people were like, oh, these things are available for me also. And it was them going to doctors and saying, use these on me. I want these used in this way. When doctors began to like then prescribe hormones in that way, it wasn't the doctors like, oh my gosh, now that synthetic hormones exist, we can help this community self-actualize. It was always the community giving information, giving lived experience, giving expertise to the medical professionals who then like institutionalized that knowledge rather than like it coming from like medical professionals. I think that the flaw, if there's a kind of flaw of thinking about medical knowledge as real knowledge or trustworthy knowledge, is just like the differentiation between medical and non-medical knowledge, like who gets to make those claims about something and why, because it's always about power, right?
Sure, we can have certain surgeries, but still for us, that's not empowerment. That's not a relationship of care. And that's for us also the next step is really also talking about the idea to move from kind of a healthcare that is really top down to a reciprocal like care support system where the caregiver and the care receivers are seen as like partners into like their own empowerment.
I definitely think that the like being born in the wrong body had an impact on me. Like I didn't feel that way. So I didn't even really think about hormones or like healthcare for a while when I was young and becoming disabled, like starting to have symptoms. And then having to learn, like, I don't love what's happening within my body, but it's doing the best that it can. And like, I can't ask for more than like the best that I can get right now. That's really made me like rethink transness and the medical model of transness and the way that it applies to like the medical model of disability. I think like the trans experience has been viewed as a disability. Again, like gender dysphoria is something that you're diagnosed with, but just like gross. I think about trans stuff and universal design in like a similar way. So like when we think about things like universal design, that's like if you've got a building and you're building a new building, instead of being like, oh, it's a lot of work to put in stairs and a ramp for people who use mobility aids, like why are you even putting the stairs there? You don't need stairs. Everyone can use the ramp. Like that's a piece of universal design. I feel like it's the same thing with transness. Like because we've set it up as being like, oh, if you're trans, that's like you're the odd man out. Whereas like we don't have to do that. We can expect everyone to tell us what their gender is, or even not that, but like to learn and experience gender in their own way, which is like something that's not expected of cis people. And I think like we should all have time and space to do that. Mess around, try out things. And if they work for you, great. And if they don't, great. Don't do them anymore. I'm pretty sure there are regret statistics for like every single surgery because it happens.
And I think the discomfort for me, the more that I'm processing out loud, comes from the desire from the medical community to understand the deep inner workings of my identity in ways that sometimes I haven't even shared with my friends or my loved ones or my family yet, because they are so deeply personal and deeply intimate. And that entitlement feels like I'm being studied in a way that I feel a lot of folks who are accessing different kinds of care don't have to navigate or go through.
I'm not really sure where I learned to relate accessing trans healthcare as the solution to all of my problems. I think it's a combination of many things. I think it's a combination of I like experience dysphoria, but I'm not really sure where that dysphoria comes from. I'm not sure if it's a learned behavior, like hearing other trans men speak about their dysphoria and then internalizing the experience as like a young person as my own and like thinking that these are the things that are wrong. I'm not sure if it comes from there. I'm not sure if it comes from the creation of dysphoria as a thing that exists at all. Like maybe it is something that is just placed upon me that I've just picked up.
I just find myself at odds because everyone wants to talk about identity and then it gets into authentic identities and who's a fraud. And I'm exhausted. And I have so many areas of my life where that's the narrative or the conversation. And it's just a waste of everybody's energy. If I, as a person, am a man, then my body is a man's body, regardless of how it looks. And I think that's the big problem was I had to prove to CAMH that I identified as a man. It doesn't fix it when CAMH suddenly accepted non-binary people, just had to prove they were non-binary.
Disabled people, people that of color, because people of color already have a thing with authority, people that are not neurodivergent, people that are not passing because you know they're afraid that they go out and they're going to get judged anyway, so they don't want to leave their house.
Class is inherently this paternalistic relationship, and people will just so deeply presume incompetence and inability to manage their own affairs because otherwise, why don't you have any money? But the poverty was blocking access, and I didn't know it was. There was a minor detail where at the time when I was seeking chest surgery, I was on ODSP, I don't know, Ontario Disability Program. They didn't say, you're on ODSP. Can you find a way to pay for a hotel room in Montreal for the night? They presumed I couldn't. I had to figure out for myself that was blocking things up. It's like, I can find a hotel room in Montreal that's worth $35 a night. And they're like, that's the thing about you, that they were deciding for me that there were no safe $35 hotel rooms. Never mind, like, I have friends in Montreal, like whatever, like, you know, they just asked, like, yeah, they were not having the conversation.
Within the institutions, there is an idea of what a trans woman is, who she is, and exactly all of her life goals. all of them, which is to just look like a woman, right? And probably attract men. So I can recall having conversations with like medical professionals who would tell me things like, you know, at least you're starting off in a pretty good place. Like you're not some big hairy guy who's like 6'10" or whatever. And, you know, you don't have a big beard or dark facial hair or whatever. It's very like strange information to receive from someone because it's like, one, it gives me insight into how you feel about those trans women. And also it, you know, it's very much encouraging me to be like thin and pretty and passing.
So the passing, I hate that word. It's so stupid. What is passing? I know women, like AFAB, biological women, that look more masculine than I ever will and ever could be in my entire life. It's stupid. And gender is not even a construct. Gender is just made up. It's made up. It's a bunch of people with a bunch of rules that have said, this is what this is supposed to be, and this is what this is supposed to be. And it's all based on old white men that were too afraid to say that they weren't the strongest man in the room. That's where all this comes from. All of it. It's the same thing with that. A bunch of white cis men sitting in a room going, we're going to make all these rules about trans people, and we're going to just give it because we've had all this thought process. But if you don't have lived experience, if you don't have people like us or people from the community or the thing that you're the community that you're trying to help, you're not going to get the perspective.
And I also wish that this so-called specialization of trans healthcare was just abolished. Trans healthcare should be something that every practitioner feels comfortable and able to offer. You shouldn't have to access specialist care because you are a trans person. I believe that's incredibly discriminatory and dehumanizing. I find it difficult when in smaller resourced communities, there is only one or two places where folks can go to access trans healthcare, because what that, in my mind, creates is like high wait times, which can occur, but it also creates this sense of apathy within the medical system, which is that, okay, well, these are the places that we send trans folks to access care, and we don't have to worry about them. And then we don't have a holistic service provision model that allows for trans folks to access services in a timely fashion alongside, for example, mental health, alongside, for example, community-based resources around finance or food security.
How to have a more like flat or like more like horizontal understanding of like a community of care in between patient and doctors, or between caregivers and care receivers, I like to call it. For me, it's like kind of also a shift that is a bit larger. If there was no patriarchy and no like violence against women, and so and against trans women especially, and trans people, but like I think trans women especially, I don't know how people will act towards their own gender. And I feel there will be probably more people who will come out as whatever gender they would like, and probably the gender will be completely different, and probably the relationship of gender to power will probably be different. So, you know, when men act a certain way, it's often because they want to act in a relationship to power, to their group of friends, and to have and get resources. For me, it comes a lot through like having a space of liberation and like creating a space where like, sure, like the doctor and like the medicine, like the healthcare system needs to empower true, but at the end of the day, like it's more than just a balance of equality. It's also creating power for trans femmes and for trans people in general, because we have something to say and to give. We are so powerful. I just see so many trans femmes that are so powerful.
In 2019, I was in a pride parade in Truro, and I was in this trans dress. I was dressed as the trans colors. It looks like a fish. It looks like a trans aquatic mermaid was going down the road in a float, and I heard this little voice yell, "I'm trans too." And I looked back, it was a little black girl. And so I ran up to her and I gave her a hug. And then after the parade, I seeked her out and I was talking to her parents. And she said, that is the first time that she said that out loud anywhere besides her family. And in that moment, I saw Christopher William Cochrane, and I realized this is exactly what I should be doing. This is exactly what I want to be doing. And this is what we need for these children. The only time we talk about trans people in this life is that it's for dying or for winning awards. I feel like there's no trans middle management talking about it. People like us, people that are actually doing things, you know?
I think it is difficult when young people feel a pressure to exist within a kind of box of transness. And that's a disservice to all of us because youth are brilliant and have ideas about gender and the future and systems change that are also rooted around and the idea of a more expansive understanding of gender and identity. And if they don't have space to practice that, if they don't have space to play with that, then we're all doomed, I believe, because it's so important. And so I believe that exploration around gender identity is so linked to also systems change and, direct action around larger systems that are not serving us, that are adjacent to medical systems.
I've seen systems change in a way that that saved people's lives. I think for me, a good measure is like one person's life saved and like the project is worth it. You know what I'm saying? I've seen system change provide real tangible results for people. I've also seen people give their entire lives to systems that did not change whatsoever. I think the first thing we need to do right now, if you're in a system, if you have the ability to make a change, make that change. Push so that whoever in the meantime needs the access, even a slight little shift might save someone's life. Probably will. Almost definitely will. I just think that there are times where you can move a mountain with a pebble in our systems. And there are times where you can rally an entire village and you won't move a rock. It just takes experience to know which is which.
If like any parts of your identity belong to a marginalized group, having other people around you who get that in a world that is like so shitty is so important. I think gender affirming care in like more physical, tangible ways looks like appearance and clothing and hair and makeup and all those things, binders and whatnot. Yeah, and hormones and stuff. I think a really big important one is also the less tangible physical appearance things are like who I surround myself with, I think is like a huge thing. And most/almost everyone in my life is queer and trans or non-binary. Like it's very intentionally that way though, because it just feels so special to be able to have these conversations. Like this is like a normal thing that would occur over like dinner or drinks or something. And it just doesn't feel weird. Like there's just so many things that are like in times when like I feel like panicked about myself and the things I can't really necessarily change, just like being able to have people around me who really get that or who are down to talk about it or are down to like distract about it or just things like that. Like or just people who you don't have to feel like tense around all the time is really a big priority to me.
Thank you so much for that beautiful screening, Brody and Elliot. Before we begin with the questions portion, that bit about passing always gets me. Because like, let's be honest, no one really passes. And the only people that passes are not even people, they're plastic. It's Barbie and Ken. Anyways, let's get back to the question portion. I have a few questions here for the artists and filmmakers and partners in crime, Brody and Elliot. The first question I have is, this film from start to finish has been deeply collaborative. You both positioned yourself as messengers and a platform for you and community members to talk about your and their personal lived experiences. Could you talk more about how you arrive at this idea?
Yeah, definitely. Well, we made this film as part of the CFAT Media Art Scholarship, which is a Center for Art Tapes. It's a artist-run center here in Jabuktuk, and we applied with this idea to make a film about trans healthcare, and we really like this idea came from all of the conversations that we've had with trans people in community about their sometimes horror stories, their experiences about accessing medical care, but also the like deep knowledge that they have about critiques and ways that that medical system can be changed or can be different or can better serve us. So like I think that those kind of community conversations really became the like driving force of like there is content here for a film. And then the challenge really became like creating the container for those stories and experiences to be like recorded and presented.
I think in addition to that too, like just in our own lives, like talking about our own experiences accessing healthcare. Like I accessed healthcare a few years before you did, and like talking about the differences between those, I think really sparked a lot of ideas about how much the ideas of like trans healthcare can change within like a singular community, let alone a larger community. And I think we were really interested in exploring the nuances between different experiences, right? Like and I think about like myself as a young person too, and I'm like, I really wish that I had access to a lot of these like really smart community members like thoughts and opinions and experiences, because I think it really changed and influenced how I thought about it as a young person and how I would have engaged with it. So I think that we were also inspired by kind of just like community need for trans knowledge from trans people, and like a variety of trans people, like an array.
Yeah, and like so much can change in just a few years too, and I feel like we're kind of living in this moment where there's kind of a conversation shift publicly around moving from like an older gatekeeping model where you're like required to have a diagnosis of gender dysphoria in order to access any kind of medical intervention, be that hormones or surgery, to more of a like informed consent model where there's less gatekeeping. And it just really felt like the appropriate time to kind of create a time capsule of like experiences before that shift and during that shift.
Thank you so much. I personally felt very seen um, witnessing this film when it was first launched. My next question is, why is film the best medium to collaborate and to execute this concept? Because both of you folks have, I know that Brody is an interdisciplinary artist and writer, um, incredible and smart, and Elliot is this amazing graphic and illustration artist, but also an experience with filmmaking. So I'm curious why film?
Totally. I'm like, I think that we landed on film as like the medium for this message because, well, like I have my own individual experience with film, like through an education background and just like personal interest. And I know Brody has experience creating like a variety of different kinds of like video art um styles. So I think that we were really well equipped to kind of tackle like a film project together, like our first film project together, because we yeah, we were like passionate about the project and we both had our own like slight experiences engaging in film. And beyond that, I think of film as kind of like this kind of a medium that is like Brady said, like inherently a time capsule of like whether it's like the actor or subject or like specific topic, like a film or a like visual media message is so rooted in the present, like the moment that it was made. So like all of the community members that we interviewed, their experiences were locked down for this specific moment in time. Like all of their cumulative experiences, we were able to present in a concise manner. And film is also so easily accessible. Like it's a medium that most people have experience with consuming. So their messages are, I feel like more, like they're laid out in a clearer way for the audience through like a familiar medium like film. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that last point that Elliot made around like access is really something we were thinking about a lot and really committed to. Like, we all know how to like watch a video or a film. Like, we live in such a video saturated world. Like, in that process of making this work, and like we had like 15 hours of interviews, and it was a challenge to like create one kind of stable product from all of that. And we had suggestions along the way from different people that were like, what if you made it like this like installation where every single interview was displayed on its own screen and wasn't edited at all, to kind of like decentralize a single voice and kind of create this like almost like maze of different experiences that the viewer could like move through and sort through. And like those ideas are very compelling, but I think it was also important to us that people didn't need to necessarily have this kind of like art formal analysis background to be able to like engage and step into this, and just like keeping it very very accessible in terms of it being a film and a video. And along with that obviously came a lot of responsibility around like editing and what to include, but I think we were pretty committed to like taking on that responsibility.
Gorgeous. Thank you so much for that. I'm curious how you structured the interview process and how that informed the three-part structure of the film. Introduction as the first part, the second part being specific experiences accessing care, and the third one, reflections and critique. Um, what was the process like collaborating with community members and getting to know everyone so deeply and intimately?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much everyone that we interviewed we knew pretty well to start, and like I think we'd probably reached out to about 20 people to see if they were interested in participating, and that ended up being about half who were. And like interviewing is really an art in itself. Like I think that interview and like oral history is one of my favorite ways of like coming in contact with people's experiences in the past, like through their own voice. So like interviewing felt like the way forward, and it's pretty standard for like documentary media. And in terms of like doing the interviews, like it was like such a great pleasure to be able to really get into it with people, sometimes over like 4 to 5 hours. And the questions, like, you know, with interviewing, like you don't want to ask people the meaty question right off the bat. It really takes kind of building a rapport with someone to get to maybe what you are wanting to get to as an interviewer. But the questions themselves were really concentrated around what ended up becoming the 3 sections of the film, and that wasn't really intentional at the beginning. But when we got to the editing stage, it kind of made sense to structure it in those 3 parts. So that really kind of directly informed that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you did I think we really tried to create a space where most of the interviews were done in our house, like in our living room. So we really tried to create a space where folks felt comfortable just venting and kind of reflecting inward about their own experience in a way that felt safe and able to maintain, like, and I think that Brody's really done an excellent job in like maintaining those relationships throughout the process, and involving the people we interviewed in their own storytelling experience.
Yeah, it was pretty cool because like one of the people who's in the film, Mabel, was actually one of our like mentors at CFAT and was like, oh, you're making a film about this. Like, I know a lot about this. So some of it was more like we were reaching out to people that we knew, but then we kind of had some folks come forward who were like, I want to be a part of this, which was really cool.
Yeah, a real opportunity to get to know other members of the community as well.
Yeah.
I think I highly recommend folks to register and see the film, because in the beginning of the film, there's a lot of, you get to really get the sense that all of the participants are comfortable cracking jokes. It's just so beautiful and personal. Yeah, and I think a significant impact your film had on me is it in like black and coral slash salmon title, it says born in a body, and a lot of the audience expected to see a body, but they were also denied that. But it was also just so nice to hear how everyone focused on how their body feels moving through this process is. um, and I think that's like what's very enthralling and about your film, that you highlighted the findings and the emotional, the phenomenological experiences of the participants. And I'm curious, could you share about the formal elements of the work? What made you pursue the coral salmon color theme, the pacing, and the animated ghostly abstractions, where you play with showing and not showing the participants? Because I understand that you have 15 hours of interviews with this with the participants, like video footage.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm like, so part of the one thing we always discuss throughout the creation of this project is wanting to highlight the participants interviewed like experiences, like highlight their voice rather than their figure. And unfortunately we ended up damaging the hard drive that the most of the camera footage was on, so we kind of had to shift gears, and you know, we had some of the footage, so I was able to base a lot of the animations off of some of the footage, and I thought that a good way to express the personality of a person is how they talk, right? Because talking is so much more than words. It's body language, it's how much space you take up, it's how much time you choose to speak, right? Like it's so many little elements. So just like a slight representation to highlight a person's story, I feel like is so much more effective than outline like detailing every element of a narrative. So we were also kind of constrained by our media art scholarship timeline. Like I think we had about I want to say 9 months to complete the project. I'm not sure if that's like accurate or not, but yeah, so about 9 months to complete the project, and we knew we wanted to make it a feature that felt important to me, at least, because there's so much that we didn't include. So what we didn't include, it felt necessary to be supported by other elements. So I feel like that kind of resulted in it naturally being as long as it is. And yeah, and with the looping of the animation, it's kind of like relevant to the timeline that we had, and I didn't really want it to look too boring. That was a main goal of mine, was to be visually interesting, but highlight and support the words of the people we we interviewed.
Yeah, I think it's almost like a kind of visualized collective oral history, and I really think that Elliot did a phenomenal job with like I think the saying is like work smart, not hard, and like reusing like a simple animation loop in so many different ways, and the three parts and the three different color schemes for each part I think is really beautiful. And like just with the way that we edited it too, like there wasn't one kind of centralized voice or authority in terms of a narrator. Like while we did like edit to create a product that was not 15 hours long, I think that something that we were really committed to was creating a narrative that felt open and felt like there was room for individuals to contradict one another and say different things and have that space for discord. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we really weren't interested in presenting a specific narrative or opinion, but rather how these different experiences work together in creating this beautiful community. Yeah.
9 months for a 1 hour documentary style film is no joke. And I just want to personally say that I'm so glad that you lost some of those footage, because this film left such a huge impact, not just on me, but on a lot of the people of the film, where, like you've mentioned, Brody, that a lot of the audience mentioned how they feel like these people are not interviewed in a one-on-one basis. They're collectively talking about their experiences in one room. And I think that's what's interesting about the concept of representation, because representation operates in a dialectical manner, where you represent the subject, but there's also a risk of reducing that subject, right? So there's a risk of misrepresentation in society, especially when trans people are often framed in practices and performances that are often spectacles of performances. And I love a good performance, don't get me wrong. And every day is a performance for everyone. Uh, yeah, but I think it's interesting that every single person in the creative industry, and I can name a significant amount of artists that are fascinated by trans people, employ them as muses for short-term spectacles to stand for something greater, whether that is problematically hermaphroditus or The Matrix. I love The Matrix, by the way. But I'm just talking about specific people who employ trans people and don't have the transgender gaze to create or support this perspective. And I think it's very important that this film communicates knowledge and felt realities that are from trans people, by trans people, because they're often framed, like I said, as spectacles. Your film positions community members as the origin of knowledge, but you also played with this idea of showing and not showing. Could you speak more about that?
Yeah, thanks, Excel. I think about this a lot, and I think like the question is ultimately one about like ethics and like how to represent people with tact and with like responsibility. And there's so many different ways to think about this, like with like collaborative art, where like from the beginning to the end it's something that is decided as a group, but like this was maybe more like participatory is a good word, where like we created this like clear container of like, do you want to be a part of this in this specific way through being interviewed and being depicted and being represented. And I think that like even that distinction can be valuable because it allows people more of a clear terms of participation, which is ultimately like maybe less labor than like designing something from the like bottom up. But like it was something that we really were thinking about a lot making this, and really wanting to represent people well and in the way that they wanted, because I think with like trans people in general, like a lot of people in general and specifically with this project have been misrepresented in media and in different ways. So like the consent of people in just like what we were including in the film was really important. And obviously that looked different for different people. Like some people were like, you know, include whatever you want. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to see it. And others, it was more of a like kind of like meticulous process of really ensuring consent and approval of the way that they were represented. Yeah, so it really looked different for everyone, but it felt good to create a kind of also the ability to make a final product where people were there, really. Yeah.
There's a beautiful two words that you've called it in our chats, epistemic justice. Could you talk more about how this film is an act of justice of our beloved?
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful way to put it. Justice for our beloved. And I think that like epistemic justice is a huge concept that like I think about a lot and that we were talking about a lot. And like really it means like doing people right. And I don't know if setting the record straight is like a great way to put it, but I think that's also related to the last thing we were talking about in like people feeling like they were represented with tact and with responsibility. And it was really nice to hear from folks like almost like, whoa, you're like checking in almost relentlessly, or like, you know, this is the most considered or represented I've ever felt participating in a project like this. And I think that that was something that was really important to us. And like before we shared the film with the general public, we had like a kind of private screening with people who were in the film and like their loved ones. That was really, really sweet and meaningful.
It's such a blessing to not only witness the first screening of your film, Brody and Elliot. Born in a Body is such a huge consciousness raising project about the medical system, but I also just love how funny some aspects of the film is. And I felt personally very emboldened, and I'm so glad that you said yes to working with me um, uh, in this artist project. And thank you so much, Joy, for inviting the three of us, uh, yeah, in this CMAG artist project. I'm curious, could you share more about how the audience both received your film and what were your favorite comments?
Yeah, I think that like consciousness raising is a really great way to put it. And I think that like, you know, seeing a film or any kind of artwork presented to a public is such a great kind of litmus test for like, is this doing the thing that we thought it would? And hearing people like laugh, but also cry, but also like question their own identity and be like, whoa, maybe medical gatekeeping has had such an impact on me that like I felt like I wasn't a part of this community, but with this information I'm like feeling differently. And I think for a lot of people, just like it created this opportunity for them to connect what may have felt like a kind of individual isolated struggle to something more collective and intergenerational that like trans folks have been working to change for a very long time was really empowering for a lot of people. And that was really really cool to see. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really nice to hear folks say that they got more out of it than they thought they would. And to hear how the film helped expand on their own experiences. I think you nail on the head that answer.
Yeah. And we were really nervous about like presenting a hour-long, but a lot of people were like, wait, it's over. They're like, what? Like they wanted more, and that felt good also to create something that was like people were like wanting more, and people with this like feeling of action or some kind of anticipation for something more. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that 1 hour film felt like 15 minutes for me and for a lot of peers. My one last question for you both is, what's next for you both cuties after this film?
Well, I know we were talking about our next collaborative work being kind of a similar experimental film, but one that would explore people's relationship to sex and how sex influences their lives. And yeah, I think that we really gained a lot of like interview skills so throughout this process, and like film cinematic skills in order to like really create something that's quite nuanced and kind of unexpected, because I feel like sex is such a taboo topic that it would be really interesting to explore in kind of a similar medium about like through people's like individual experiences and how those like experiences might overlap with one another, and how it might touch the audience's own lived experiences. I think that is our next co-joint project.
Yeah, we've been dreaming up this like work that is like trying to look at the intersections of like trans identity and sexuality and sex, and like something that I think was really cool about the process of making this film was that like when we had originally kind of pitched the idea to participants, it was going to be a videographed photographic representation of folks. So when it ended up shifting to being an animation, some people were like, oh, I totally would have participated. It wasn't going to be like a photographic representation. And just to think about like, you know, talking about something so taboo that like people don't want to be represented at all, or it's completely anonymous, even to the extent of like anonymizing people's voices and like having no real world accountability for what someone is saying. And like obviously that would like decrease some kind of evidentiary value, but it would like so much increase like emotion and affect. So that is something that we're hoping to kind of
cooking up.
Yeah, we're cooking that one.
Thank you. I'm excited to see to partake in this meal in the future. I want to open it up to Q&A from the audience. If you have questions for the artists, for all of us. I also just want to say thank you again, Joy Shang, for inviting me to take part in C Magazine's artist project. It's been such a pleasure working with you and to be able to work with such incredible, brilliant, considerate, compassionate, and gorgeous artists, Brody, Weaver, and Elliot Ciz.
Yeah.
Thanks, Excel.
Yeah, thank you, Excel, and thank you, Joy. Really nice to be able to do this artist talk, and thank you to everyone who has joined and everyone who's going to be watching this as a recording. And thank you so much to all the folks who were in the film. I know some of you are here right now. We couldn't have done this without you. Yeah, much love.
Thank you. That felt so intimate and very generous, again, as you have said, Excel. Thank you so much, Brody, Elliot, Excel. Yeah, I didn't have any questions, but I feel this huge, even through the documentary and your conversation today, like this very considered intimacy allowance to viewers and different viewers, like to trans viewers, cis viewers, from Excel's text too, like you talk about reading something coded in the film, based on how you've lived your life, who you are, and what you intrinsically know. And there is something about the apparitional aesthetics that feels magic in that way. It's like a generosity of offering and highlighting these experiences, but also feels to me like also protective, and like what you've talked about doing right by the community and within the community. It just feels really special to sit in on. And thank you so much for what you have brought and for this conversation. And to our viewers who are here tonight, again, you can still view that film if you haven't already through the link. Feel free to share it with people privately with the password until December 10th. And we will put together this recording and also post it online if you'd like to share. Thank you again, Brody, Elliot, Excel, and to everyone for being here tonight. I hope everyone has a night that gives them something of what they need, and you stay cozy and get some rest. Bye.